My name is Vojtech Simetka, and I'm joined with Rinke Hendiksen here, and we're here together with IOV Labs, who is partnering with Swarm to build the distributed storage incentives. So before I dive into it, and actually really Rinke is the expert here, I will just very briefly introduce who we are. So IOV Labs is an organization that is building RSK, Rootstock, and RIFOS. So RIFOS is a one-stop framework that is adding the layers that are needed in between blockchain and dev developers. So that's storage, that's level 2 payments, naming system, gateways, service marketplace, and things like that. So we partnered in July with Swarm to integrate Swarm into the RIF storage system. And for the last three months, we've been working together, and by we I again mean Rinke, Fabio, who's here, Ralph, Marcelo, and Santiago, and Diego Massini, who are all members of this joint incentive track that we're doing together. And we've been building this swap incentives. And I think we're launching a incentive testnet soon. So I'm going to give a word to Rinke, who's the expert on the swap.
Yeah, my pointer works. So hey everybody, thank you so much for being here. My name is Rinke Hendiksen, and as Vojtech already said, I work as a developer on Swarm, but I'm employed by IOV Labs, and I'm also having a background as an economist. Okay, so a bit of a background, because I realize this is like the first, maybe some general presentation. As you might know, but I actually want to question this. Who here says he's comfortable with Swarm? Like, all right, a little bit less than half. So let's just give a brief overview. Okay, so Swarm, you have a chunk, and a chunk is a very tiny piece of data, about 4,000 bytes. And these chunks, you can upload them to Swarm, and based on a certain algorithm, they will be spread throughout the network. Like you really, as you upload something, you don't have to say where these chunks come. They're just going in a network based on the address, based on the hash of the chunk and the addresses of the nodes. So they're spread in the network, and the idea is that if I, as a node or like a user of Swarm, wants to download those chunks, I can retrieve them upon demand, and then again magic happens, and these chunks are somewhere assembled and they're being showed in the browser or wherever. Anyways, like this sounds very nice, right? But any problems with this? Yeah, you can shout. So, okay. Well, there's no incentives really, because it sounds nice that all these chunks are being spread throughout the network and people just host it, but it's in the real world, if you want to build like a really robust and DDoS resistant and scalable network, you have to pay somehow. You need to, the nodes in the network, they must be compensated for hosting those chunks. So this is the incentives track, and that's why the incentives are so important. So meet Swap. Swap is the Swarm accounting protocol, and it's like the base layer of incentives in Swarm. And really the core idea is that instead of paying for everything which happens in the network, you keep account of what you're doing with your peers. So, in a sense, nodes keep track of balances with all the peers. And a balance can be either positive or negative. Now, if the balance tilts too much to one side, so if the peer which we are connecting to, like, so if the balance tilts too much to one side, we pay our peer, and if the balance tilts too much to the other side, we expect a payment from our peer. And this is like very high over what the Swarm accounting protocol is. Now I'll just introduce it a bit more in detail. For this I have some graphical something. So here you see two nodes. You have seen nodes B and node D. And below here we see the chunkometer. Well, the chunkometer is not the official term, but we just like to use it. But anyways, this you can see it as like the balances. So here we have a balance, here we have a balance, and right now the chunkometer is at 0. And you see here in red, this is where we actually don't hope to be. So this means if our peer doesn't pay, it's okay if we are here, but if our peer doesn't pay, when we reach 120, we disconnect. So that's the chunkometer. Now we're going to use Swarm, right? We're going to send chunks back and forth. So now we send one chunk from B to D. You see? Also the chunkometer, just the balance tilts a bit to the other side. But now there's like an equal consumption, right? We're both using Swarm and there's not high variance. So next time the chunks are being served to the other side and the balance tilts a bit to the other side. And that's how it happens. No payment happens at all. We just keeping track, we just accounting, basically. Oh, now there comes a big chunk, or he's downloading, maybe he's streaming a movie. And then you see that the chunkometer tilts to the 100, and then we do a payment. Yeah, so the chunkometer is being set back to 0. And this payment can really be in Ether, or in RSK or RIP. It's a peer-to-peer network, so in principle it should not matter in what currency you pay your node. The only thing that matters is that you can pay your peer. Yeah. Okay, so how to do those payments? That's actually the next part of my talk. What I already said, the peer-to-peer nature in Swarm makes it possible that Swarm is payment agnostic. So what I said, the only thing that matters is that you can do the payment, and how doesn't really matter. But of course we have an initial implementation, and this is what we will advise nodes to use when they boot up Swarm. And this is the checkbook. Checkbook is basically an on-chain deposit against which checks can be written. And checks, they are like checks in real life, they are redeemable at time in the future. And of course you can save gas costs if you accumulate checks. So you don't have to cash all the checks like you would do with a real life check, but this is like a cumulative amount. So you can save gas costs. So this is a checkbook. So here we have a check. And on the check you have some information. It's the contract address, you have the beneficiary, so to whom are you paying, and the cumulative amount. And this is a smart contract. And you have the cumulative amount and the signature. But, well, we're not cashing this check, we want to save a bit of gas costs. So we get another check. This check lists exactly the same contract address, exactly the same beneficiary, but now the cumulative amount is 200. Get another one. Cumulative amount is 300. And now the peer who is actually the beneficiary of this check thinks, okay, let's cash them out. Let's send this piece of information with this signature. Let's send it to the checkbook. The checkbook has a deposit. So it pays us 300. Now we continue at the Swarm accounting protocol and those payments happen. And now we have a check of 400. And we can decide to cash this out at any moment that we want and get a bit of more security. So the checkbook is it's a very simple smart contract in a sense. But the nice things about it, it's basically a layer 2 payment system. But the nice thing about it, that as a user of Swarm, you deploy one checkbook contract, you fund it with money, and there's no limits to how many peers you can pay out from your checkbook smart contract. So that's really beneficial for Swarm, because once you boot up a Swarm node, you actually, I don't know how many nodes are we expecting as a Swarm node, but let's say it's 100. So it would be really not a good idea to open a payment channel with 100 people, because maybe you even don't have Ether. So you really want to deploy a checkbook contract, one contract, and you can serve as many peers as you want. There's a nice trade-off between security and costs, because if you want this to be super secure, you cash out, if you have a check, you cash it out directly. So you don't save on gas costs, but you cash out the check directly. But if you think, okay, Swarm, there's like a repeated dealings with all those peers. So you have been dealing already for a month with one peer, and I think, okay, I don't want to cash out this check directly, but I trust this peer, and let's wait maybe until I have accumulated 5 checks for 500. And then you have a bit less security, but you save a lot of on-gas costs, of course. And then what we also have, there's the no ETH entry into Swarm. This is a feature which is on the roadmap, will be developed very soon. But that's basically you as a node, you boot up Swarm, and you don't have any Ether. Like, it's great from a UX perspective, right? Because most of the real users don't have an Ether account. But what you could do if you boot up Swarm, you can basically say, you flag, okay, I don't have any Ether, but as we are incurring in swap and you send checks to me, please, instead of just paying this directly to me, can you deposit a smart contract for me? And I will compensate you for doing this. That's the principle of no Ether entry into Swarm. All right, and then of course, there's also some hot topics for research, like the Swarm incentive protocol is like, or the incentives layer is like, we are the first ones to do this, I think, in the blockchain space. So there's like a lot of hot topics for research. And for this, we invite all of you just to think together with us, because they're not really answered. Like, we have ideas, but we're implementing them, so it's like really hot topic. So one is setting prices. So what is like a reasonable price for using Swarm? How much does a chunk cost? Well, that's one question. The other one is supporting multi-currency swarms. So as I already said, in principle, it should not matter that if you do a payment to one node and the node wants to pay you in RIV, it should be okay, right? That's the principle. But of course, there's some side effects, and we have routing assumptions and a lot of interesting questions. But okay, that's not a hot topic. The other one is incentivization for long-term storage. Swap is really about incentivizing content which is hot, which is topical, which is being downloaded frequently. But what if I have like a photo album and I don't often download it, but maybe in 10 years I want to download it, right? So it's not really, it's long-term storage. And yeah, you can contribute, I don't know if you can read it, but we have a SWIPS repo that is on the ethersphere/SWIPS. And there you will find SWIPS for all those topics. All right?
Okay, so I'll close this presentation with a roadmap. So in the immediate future, the first thing we want to do is really polish the bandwidth incentives. So this is the swap. Implement some sensible pricing, oracles, and discovery of the prices. Payments through multiple ways, for example, through RIPs. Postage stamps, which is actually a spam protection and a way how to ensure that your content gets pushed to the network. Then later on, the big topic is storage incentives. So this is the persistent storage. This year we want to tackle a centralized way of doing it, so pay to pin, kind of a little bit similar how IPFS does this. And later on in the decentralized fashion, so this is the swear and swindle as described as the SW3 paper. Incentives gateway is another thing we want to build, so providing a simple tool for the third parties to just run their own node and to actually be paid for running node and providing access to Swarm. And eventually building a storage-like nodes, which will allow us easy browser integration and could be and is necessary for being mobile friendly. And one last thing, I'm going to show you a short demo, but this is actually a content that we're going to do together at 2 o'clock in the workshop. 2:40. But I'm going to demo a little bit it right now. So the first thing I do is I'm just running a Ganache, which is just a local blockchain here. Then I'll be running a boot node of Swarm, and I'll connect a few other nodes to it. Even right now, I've created this simple website which should actually show me the content of the node. So this is my node that is running. I don't yet see Ethereum address of my node nor the checkbook address, but I already see that I have two peers that I'm connected to. I see that I have 0 balance between those two, and that I haven't sent any checks. But let's start a few more nodes and see what happens. So they get added here. Now I have some 4 nodes that I'm connected to, and I'm going to create. Oops, that's not the one I wanted to say. I'm going to create some random traffic on the network. That's hopefully going to. So I'm randomly uploading and downloading to the different nodes, and as I do so, the balances should change. Maybe we're just very unlucky here, and actually nothing hits the. Oh, right. That would explain it. So now I'm just uploading between the boot node and the first node, and yes, I'm uploading 16 kilobyte files. So the balances should change over time, and we can already see that as these nodes communicate, they've already paid the check here. So we can even have a look at the check. So this is last received check from a peer 1, and I got already paid because I directly actually cash it out. Some 1.9 times 10 to the 14th way.
Yeah. So I want to emphasize that this is like. Yeah, so this is work in progress, but it's actually working, right? And today at 2:40 we hope to see all of you here, and you'll actually be able to boot up Swarm and actually join the first live incentivized testnet. And we're going to run it in Robston and not in Ganache, so please join. Yeah. Oh, guys. Yeah. Thank you.